The day Earth's innocence died began like any other. Dr. Samantha Chen, lead researcher at the SETI Institute, was halfway through her morning coffee when the signal arrived. At first, she thought it was a glitch, an errant radio wave or a misfiring satellite. But as she stared at her monitor, watching the steady pulse of alien mathematics scroll across her screen, her hands began to shake. "Holy shit," she whispered, her coffee mug slipping from her grasp and shattering on the floor. "It's real." Within hours, the news had spread across the globe. Humanity was not alone in the universe. The signal, originating from a star system just 40 light-years away, contained a simple mathematical sequence: prime numbers, the value of pi, basic equations. It was a cosmic hello, an invitation to a greater galactic community. As Earth celebrated this monumental discovery, Dr. Chen and her team worked tirelessly to decode the more complex data embedded within the signal. It took weeks, but finally, they cracked it. Coordinates for a rendezvous point just beyond the orbit of Mars. The world's governments, setting aside their differences in the face of this historic moment, pooled their resources to hastily construct humanity's first faster-than-light vessel. They named it the HSS Unity, a symbol of Earth's newfound solidarity. Captain Alina Volkov, decorated veteran and top graduate of the International Space Academy, was chosen to lead the mission. As she stood on the launch pad, gazing up at the sleek ship that would carry humanity's hopes and dreams to the stars, she felt the weight of history on her shoulders. "We're ready for this," she murmured to herself, straightening her uniform. "We have to be." The journey to the rendezvous point took just 3 days, a testament to the incredible technology that had been reverse-engineered from the alien signal. As the Unity dropped out of FTL, the crew gasped in awe at the sight before them. A massive ship, easily 10 times the size of the Unity, hung in space. Its hull shimmered with an iridescent light, like oil on water. As they watched, a hangar bay opened, bathing the Unity in a warm, inviting glow. "Well," Alina said, her voice steady despite the butterflies in her stomach, "let's not keep our new friends waiting." The alien delegation that greeted them was a sight to behold. Tall, willowy beings with luminescent skin and eyes that seemed to contain entire galaxies. They called themselves the Astari, and they welcomed humanity with open arms. "We have watched your species for centuries," their leader, a being named Zarteth, explained. Its voice was melodious, transmitted directly into the humans' minds. "We have waited for you to reach this moment, to join us among the stars." Over the next few days, the Astari shared wonders beyond humanity's wildest dreams. They spoke of a galactic council, a confederation of advanced species that maintained peace and prosperity across the cosmos. They offered humanity membership, along with the technological and cultural riches that came with it. "All we ask," Zarteth said, its eyes twinkling with an emotion Alina couldn't quite place, "is that you prove yourselves worthy." The test seemed simple enough. The Astari would send a small fleet to Earth, ostensibly to help humanity prepare for their new role in galactic society. All Earth had to do was welcome them with open arms, to show their trust and willingness to cooperate. As the Unity prepared to return home with the good news, Alina couldn't shake a nagging feeling in the pit of her stomach. It all seemed too good to be true. Her suspicions were confirmed when, during her final night aboard the Astari ship, she overheard a conversation not meant for human ears. Hidden behind a translucent energy field, she watched as Zarteth met with a group of shadowy figures. "The humans suspect nothing," Zarteth said, its mental voice now cold and calculating. "They will welcome our ships with open arms, never realizing they're inviting their own destruction." One of the shadowy figures spoke, its voice like gravel. "And you're certain they pose no threat?" They managed faster-than-light travel rather quickly. Zarteth laughed, a sound that sent chills down Alina's spine. "Please, their FTL drive is a crude copy of the one we sent in the signal. They're children playing with technology they don't understand. Once our ships are in orbit, their pitiful defenses will crumble in minutes." Alina's blood ran cold. The Asteri weren't benevolent saviors. They were conquerors, and humanity was their next target. As she crept back to her quarters, her mind raced. How could she warn Earth without tipping off the Asteri? How could humanity possibly hope to defend itself against a technologically superior enemy that had already infiltrated their defenses? The next morning, as the Unity prepared to depart, Alina maintained a facade of excitement and gratitude. But as she shook hands with Tsar Teth one final time, she met its gaze with steely determination. "We look forward to welcoming you to Earth," she said, her voice steady. Tsar Teth's lips curled into what might have been a smile. "Oh, Captain Volkov, believe me, we can't wait." As the Unity jumped to FTL, leaving the Asteri ship behind, Alina gathered her crew. Her expression grim, she began to explain what she had discovered. The celebration aboard the ship died instantly, replaced by a heavy silence as the weight of their situation sank in. "So what do we do, Captain?" her first officer asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Alina's eyes hardened with resolve. "We prepare. We warn Earth. And then we fight. They think we're helpless children, but humanity has faced impossible odds before. If the Asteri want our planet, they'll have to pry it from our cold, dead hands." As the Unity raced back to Earth, carrying a warning of the impending doom, humanity stood on the brink of its greatest challenge. The Asteri were coming, not with open arms, but with clenched fists. And in the face of this cosmic deception, Earth would have to unite as never before. The game was rigged, the odds stacked against them. But if there's one thing humans excel at, it's defying the odds. The Asteri thought Earth's defeat was certain. They were about to learn just how wrong they were. The Galactic Council's ultimatum. The return of the HSS Unity to Earth sparked a firestorm of activity. Captain Alina Volkov's warning of the Asteri's true intentions sent shockwaves through governments worldwide. The initial euphoria of first contact quickly gave way to grim determination as humanity faced the stark reality of their situation. In an emergency session of the United Nations, world leaders gathered to address the looming threat. The General Assembly Hall buzzed with tension as Alina took the podium, her voice steady as she recounted what she'd overheard on the Asteri ship. "Make no mistake," she concluded, her eyes sweeping across the room. "This is not a diplomatic mission. It's an invasion force, and they believe we'll welcome them with open arms." The uproar that followed was deafening. Accusations flew, fingers were pointed, and for a moment, it seemed as if Earth might tear itself apart before the Asteri even arrived. But then, a voice cut through the chaos. Dr. Samantha Chen, that SETI researcher who had first detected the alien signal, stood up. "Enough," she shouted, her voice amplified by the room's acoustics. "This is exactly what the Asteri want. They expect us to bicker and fight amongst ourselves. We cannot afford to be divided. Not now." Her words seemed to snap the assembly out of its frenzy. One by one, leaders nodded in agreement. Earth had always been a fractious planet, but in the face of this existential threat, old rivalries and conflicts seemed petty. Over the next few weeks, the world transformed. Military forces were mobilized. Scientists worked around the clock to analyze the alien technology gleaned from the Unity's encounter, and a global defense strategy began to take shape. But even as humanity prepared for war, they maintained the charade of welcome. When the Asteri fleet arrived in orbit, they were greeted with messages of peace and cooperation. All the while, on the surface, Earth's defenders readied themselves for the fight of their lives. The deception lasted 3 days. On the 4th day, as dawn broke over the Pacific, the Asteri struck. Energy beams lanced down from the sky, targeting military installations and major cities. The attacks were precise, devastating, but not as overwhelming as the aliens had clearly expected. Earth's hastily prepared defenses, bolstered by the forewarning, managed to blunt the worst of the assault. As chaos erupted across the globe, a new signal cut through the airwaves. It wasn't from the Asteri, or from any Earth-based transmitter. The message originated from deep space, and its contents changed everything. Attention, species of Earth and forces of the Asteri Dominion. This is High Arbiter Xanvox of the Galactic Council. Cease hostilities immediately. The fighting ground to a halt as both sides scramble to understand this new development. Within hours, representatives from Earth and the Asteri found themselves transported to a massive space station hidden in the shadow of Jupiter. The Galactic Council, it turned out, was very real. But unlike the benevolent organization the Asteri had described, it was a ruthless bureaucracy concerned primarily with maintaining the status quo of the galaxy. High Arbiter Xanvox, a being that seemed to be composed entirely of shimmering energy, regarded the assembled representatives with cold disdain. The Asteri Dominion has violated council law by attempting to conquer a pre-FTL civilization without sanction, Xanvox announced, its voice echoing in the minds of all present. However, the humans have also broken our laws by developing faster-than-light technology without council approval. Elena, chosen to represent humanity, stepped forward. We didn't know about your laws, she argued. We were defending ourselves against an unprovoked attack. Xanvox's form flickered, a gesture that might have been the equivalent of a shrug. Ignorance of the law is no excuse. The Council's decree is as follows. The Asteri will immediately withdraw their forces from the Sol system. A cheer began to rise from the human delegation, but Xanvox wasn't finished. In return, humanity will surrender all faster-than-light technology and knowledge. You will be quarantined in your home system for a probationary period of no less than 500 Earth years. The chamber erupted in protests from both sides. Zarteth, the Asteri leader, raged against the Council's interference. Elena and her team argued passionately against the unfairness of the punishment. But Xanvox remained unmoved. This is not a negotiation. You have 24 Earth hours to comply, or the Council will be forced to take corrective action. With that ominous warning, the humans and Asteri were returned to their respective ships. As the Unity sped back to Earth, Elena's mind raced. The Asteri threat had been neutralized, but at what cost? To give up the stars, to be caged in their own solar system for centuries. It was an unthinkable fate. Back on Earth, the news of the Council's ultimatum was met with a mixture of relief and outrage. They had survived the Asteri attack, but now faced a choice that seemed impossible. Submit to the Council's demands and lose the freedom they had just begun to taste, or defy the ultimatum and face the wrath of an entire galactic civilization. As the deadline approached, humanity found itself at a crossroads. Submit and survive, or fight and risk everything. The next 24 hours would determine the course of human history for generations to come. In the White House Situation Room, President Catalina Ortiz looked around at her advisors, her expression grim but determined. Options, she said simply. I need options. Dr. Chen, who had been busy analyzing the Council's technology, spoke up. Madam President, I think I might have an idea. It's risky, possibly suicidal. But at this point, Dr. Ortiz interrupted, suicidal might be exactly what we need. Let's hear it. As Chen began to outline her desperate plan, a spark of hope flickered in the room. Perhaps humanity wasn't out of the fight just yet. Earth's desperate gambit. Dr. Samantha Chen's plan was audacious, bordering on insanity. But in the face of the Galactic Council's ultimatum, insanity might be humanity's only hope. The Council's technology is far beyond ours, Chen explained, her hands flying over a holographic display. But it's not magic. It operates on principles we can understand, even if we can't replicate them yet. And there's one thing I noticed about their faster-than-light communications. She pulled up a complex diagram, pointing to a particular energy signature. There's a quantum entanglement pattern here. It's how they maintain instantaneous communication across vast distances. But it's also a potential weakness. President Ortiz leaned forward, her brow furrowed. A weakness how exactly? Chen's eyes gleamed with a mixture of excitement and fear. If we can disrupt this pattern, we might be able to cut off the Council's communication network, at least temporarily. Captain Volkov, who had been listening intently, spoke up. And how exactly do we do that? We can barely understand their tech, let alone interfere with it. That's where it gets tricky, Chen admitted. We'd need to create a massive quantum interference field, something big enough to envelop the entire solar system. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. Finally, General Miguel Santos, chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, broke the silence. The resources required for something like that, we have to repurpose our entire global energy grid. And even then, it might not be enough. Which is why we're not going to use our energy grid, Chen said, her voice quiet but firm. We're going to use the sun. The plan, as it unfolded, was both brilliant and terrifying. Using the advanced technology that gleaned from the Unity's encounter with the Asteri, humanity would build a series of massive solar collectors around the sun. These would harness an unprecedented amount of energy, which would then be channeled into a quantum interference device of Chen's design. If it worked, it would create a quantum bubble around the entire solar system, disrupting the Council's FTL communications and sensors. Earth would effectively disappear from the galactic stage. How long would this bubble last? Ortiz asked. Chen shook her head. There's no way to know for sure. Hours, maybe days if we're lucky. But it should give us a window to act without the Council breathing down our necks. Volkov leaned forward, her eyes intense. Act how, exactly? Even if we buy ourselves some time, we're still hopelessly outgunned. It was General Santos who answered, a grim smile on his face. Not necessarily. Doctor, correct me if I'm wrong, but if this bubble blocks their sensors. Chen nodded, catching on. They'd have to send ships to investigate physically, and those ships would be cut off from the rest of the Council fleet. Exactly, Santos said. We lure them in, trap them in our bubble, and suddenly the playing field is a lot more level. President Ortiz stood, her decision made. Do it. We have less than 18 hours before the Council's deadline. I want every resource we have dedicated to this project. What followed was perhaps the most intense and unified effort in human history. As the quantum interference device was hastily constructed, the remnants of Earth's military prepared for what could be their final battle. The solar collectors, built from repurposed satellites and space stations, were positioned around the sun in record time. Every nation contributed, old enmities forgotten in the face of extinction. As the deadline approached, the device was ready. It was untested, unstable, and might very well tear the solar system apart. But it was the only chance humanity had. With 1 hour to spare, President Ortiz addressed the world. Her face, broadcast on screens across the globe, was etched with determination. My fellow humans, she began, her voice steady. In a few moments, we will activate a device that represents our last, best hope for freedom. We do not know what will happen when we flip the switch. We may be signing our own death warrant, but we know what will happen if we submit to the Council's demands. A life of subjugation, cut off from the stars we have only just begun to reach. She paused, her gaze seeming to meet every viewer's eyes. I cannot make this decision alone. This must be the choice of all humanity. So I ask you now, do we submit or do we fight? The response was immediate and overwhelming. From every corner of the globe, from crowded cities to remote villages, the answer came back loud and clear. Fight. With minutes to spare, Dr. Chen initiated the quantum interference device. For a moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then, a shimmering curtain of energy began to spread out from the sun, engulfing planet after planet. As the bubble reached the edge of the solar system, alarms blared in the Council's nearby monitoring station. But before they could react, the bubble closed and Earth vanished from their sensors. In the tense silence that followed, humanity held its breath. They had made their move. Now, They could only wait to see how the Council would respond. Aboard the HSS Unity, now transformed into Earth's makeshift flagship, Captain Volkov stared out at the shimmering barrier that now enclosed their entire star system. "And now," she murmured, "we prepare for war." As if in answer to her words, the first Council ships began to appear at the edge of the bubble. The battle for humanity's future was about to begin. The battle for Sol. The shimmering quantum bubble that enveloped the solar system rippled as the first Council ships made contact. For a moment, it seemed as if the massive vessels would simply push through. Then, with a flash of energy that lit up space like a newborn star, the ships came to a sudden stop. Aboard the HSS Unity, Captain Alina Volkov allowed herself a small smile. "It worked," she breathed, then louder to her crew. "Battle stations. This is not a drill." Across the solar system, humanity's hastily assembled defense fleet sprang into action. They were a motley assortment, retrofitted civilian ships alongside military vessels, all equipped with hybrid technology that merged human ingenuity with reverse-engineered alien tech. As more Council ships arrived, pushing against the quantum barrier, the true nature of humanity's plan became clear. The bubble wasn't just blocking communications. It was a trap. Each ship that entered became cut off from the Council's network, their advanced systems disrupted by the quantum interference. "This is our chance," Volkov announced to the fleet. "Hit them hard, hit them fast. They're not used to fighting blind." The battle that followed would be remembered for generations as one of the most audacious military maneuvers in human history. Earth's ships, piloted by crews who knew every asteroid and orbital path in their home system, ran circles around the confused and disoriented Council vessels. On Mars, a hidden base activated, launching swarms of drone fighters. These nimble craft, guided by AI systems developed in the frantic days following the Asteria attack, proved devastatingly effective against the larger, slower Council ships. In the asteroid belt, mining rigs that had been converted into weapon platforms opened fire, filling space with a deadly hail of hypervelocity projectiles. Council shields, designed to repel energy weapons, proved less effective against good old-fashioned kinetic impacts. But the Council forces, despite their initial confusion, were far from helpless. As they adjusted to the quantum interference, they began to coordinate, bringing their superior firepower to bear. Earth ships exploded in brilliant flares, their crews making the ultimate sacrifice. The Mars defense grid went dark as a Council dreadnought, easily the size of a small moon, vaporized the red planet's polar ice caps with a single shot. "We can't keep this up forever," Volkov's XO warned, his face grim as he studied the tactical display. "We're inflicting damage, but we're losing ships faster than they are." Volkov nodded, her jaw set. "We don't need forever. We just need to hold out long enough for Phase 2. As if on cue, a transmission cut through the chaos of battle. It was Dr. Chen, broadcasting from her lab on Earth. "Captain, we're ready. But you should know, we can't guarantee anyone's safety once we initiate." Volkov closed her eyes for a moment, feeling the weight of her next decision. When she opened them, her gaze was steel. "Understood, Doctor. Proceed." Across the solar system, hidden devices planted on planets, moons, and asteroids hummed to life. These were quantum resonators, designed to amplify and focus the energy of the interference bubble. As they activated, the very fabric of space-time began to warp. Council ships found themselves pulled in multiple directions, their hulls groaning under impossible stresses. Some simply winked out of existence, while others imploded, crushed by forces they were never designed to withstand. But the effect wasn't limited to the invaders. Human ships, too, were caught in the quantum turmoil. The Unity shuddered, alarms blaring, as the ship's structure threatened to tear itself apart. "All ships, this is Captain Volkov," Alina shouted into the fleet-wide comm. "Fall back to your designated safe zones, now." The human fleet scattered, racing for areas that Dr. Chen's team had calculated would be less affected by the quantum resonance. Not all of them made it. From her lab on Earth, Dr. Chen watched in horror as the solar system itself seemed to convulse. The quantum bubble, designed to merely disrupt communications, had become a maelstrom of chaos. "This is getting out of control," she muttered, her fingers flying over her console as she tried to stabilize the reaction. "We need to shut it down." But before she could act, a new alert caught her attention. Something massive was approaching the edge of the bubble, a ship that dwarfed even the largest Council dreadnought. As this behemoth made contact with the quantum field, instead of being trapped like the others, it simply pushed through. The bubble parted around it like water, and in its wake, the chaotic energies began to calm. Aboard the Unity, now barely holding together, Volkov stared at the tactical display in disbelief. "What the hell is that?" Her question was answered moments later as a transmission reached every ship and communication device in the solar system. The voice that spoke was familiar. High Arbiter Xanvox of the Galactic Council. Humans of Earth, the being's mental voice resonated with a mix of anger and, was that admiration? "You have violated Council law, attacked our peacekeeping forces, and recklessly endangered the fabric of space-time itself." There was a pause, and when Xanvox spoke again, there was a new note in its voice. "In doing so, you have also demonstrated a level of ingenuity, courage, and sheer audacity that we have not seen in 100,000 years." As the quantum disturbance faded, the full extent of the battle became clear. The solar system was littered with the wreckage of both Council and human ships. Entire moons had been shattered, and the orbits of several planets had shifted. But incredibly, impossibly, humanity had held its ground. "Captain Volkov, Dr. Chen," Xanvox continued, "representatives of Earth, the Galactic Council requests a parley. It seems we have much to discuss." As the transmission ended, a stunned silence fell over the battered human fleet. They had done the impossible. They had fought the galactic powers to a standstill. Volkov slumped in her command chair, exhaustion and disbelief warring on her face. "Well," she said to no one in particular, "I guess we've got their attention now. The battle was over. But the true test of humanity's place in the galaxy was just beginning. A new dawn for humanity." The aftermath of the battle for Sol was a sight to behold. The quantum bubble had dissipated, leaving the solar system exposed once more to the watchful eyes of the galaxy. But the view had changed dramatically. Debris from destroyed ships, both human and Council, formed new asteroid fields. The orbits of several planets had shifted, and Mars glowed an angry red, its polar ice caps vaporized in the conflict. Yet, improbably, Earth remained intact. Battered, yes, but unbroken. The parley requested by High Arbiter Xanvox took place on neutral ground, or rather, neutral space. A temporary station was assembled in Earth's orbit, cobbled together from salvaged parts of human and Council ships. It was a fitting symbol of the unprecedented situation. Neither side had emerged as a clear victor, but both had demonstrated their strengths. Captain Elena Volkov and Dr. Samantha Chen represented humanity, facing off against Xanvox and a delegation of Council species. The tension in the room was palpable as the negotiations began. "You have violated numerous Council laws," Xanvox began, its energy form flickering with barely contained anger. "The damage you've caused to this sector will take centuries to repair." Volkov leaned forward, her eyes blazing. "We were defending ourselves against extinction. Your laws meant nothing in the face of our survival." "And yet," Xanvox continued, its tone shifting slightly, "you have also demonstrated capabilities that we underestimated. Your quantum bubble technology, while reckless, shows a grasp of cosmic principles that we believe beyond your current evolution." Dr. Chen spoke up, her voice steady despite her nervousness. "We're quick learners, and we work well under pressure." A ripple of what might have been laughter passed through the alien delegation. Zanvox's form shimmered in what Elena was beginning to recognize as amusement. Indeed you do, Dr. Chen. Which brings us to the crux of the matter. The Council finds itself in an unprecedented position. Your species has simultaneously proven itself to be a potential threat and a potential asset to galactic stability. Volkov and Chen exchanged glances. This was not the direction they had expected the conversation to take. Zanvox continued, "Therefore, we propose a compromise. Earth will not be quarantined as originally decreed. Instead, you will be granted provisional membership in the Galactic Council, with full membership to be determined after a probationary period." The human representatives were stunned. This was more than they could have hoped for. But Zanvox wasn't finished. In return, you will share your quantum bubble technology with the Council, and you will accept a permanent Council observation post in your system to monitor your development. The negotiations stretched on for days. Every point was debated, every concession carefully weighed. But in the end, a historic agreement was reached. Earth would take its first steps onto the galactic stage, not as a subjugated world, but as a rising power with a voice in its own destiny. As news of the agreement spread across Earth, celebrations erupted globally. The threat of extinction had passed, and a new era of exploration and discovery beckoned. But not everyone was ecstatic. In a secure briefing room back on Earth, President Ortiz met with her top advisors. "This is a victory," General Santos said, "but it's also a challenge. We'll be under constant scrutiny. One misstep, and the Council could revoke our membership." Ortiz nodded grimly, "And we'll be playing catch-up technologically for decades, if not centuries." But she added, a spark of determination in her eyes, "We've proven we can hold our own. We've earned our place among the stars." As the meeting concluded, Ortiz found herself alone with Captain Volkov and Dr. Chen. "You too," she said softly. "You've changed the course of human history. What happens next will define our species for generations to come." Volkov stood tall, her posture reflecting the pride and responsibility she felt. "We'll be ready, Madam President. Whatever the galaxy throws at us, we'll face it head-on." Chen nodded in agreement, her mind already racing with the possibilities of the advanced science she'd glimpsed. "We have so much to learn, but also so much to offer. I think the Council will find that humanity is full of surprises." As they looked out the window at the star-filled sky, now teeming with new possibilities and hidden dangers, a sense of anticipation filled the room. Humanity had survived its trial by fire. They had faced extinction and emerged stronger, proving to the galaxy and to themselves that they were a force to be reckoned with. The coming years would be challenging. Earth would need to navigate the complex politics of the Galactic Council, balance cooperation with the protection of human interests, and push the boundaries of science and exploration further than ever before. But as the first Council ships arrived to establish the observation post, as human scientists began to collaborate with alien counterparts, as the first wave of Earth emigrants prepared to settle on distant worlds, one thing was clear: humanity's spirit, its indomitable will to survive and thrive against all odds, would carry them forward into this brave new cosmic frontier. The battle for Sol was over. Earth had not only survived, but thrived. And now, the greatest adventure in human history was about to begin. The stars, once distant and unreachable, now beckoned, and humanity, bloodied but unbowed, was ready to answer the call. As the sun rose on this new era, casting its light on a changed Earth, the message was clear. Humanity had arrived on the galactic stage, and they were here to stay.